If your equipment isn't properly set up, you might be missing some of the benefits that stereo can provide.
Missile down, radar down, what's happening? We're 3 minutes away from a loss of signal. All the people on this earth are truly one.
It's a dream.
One, two, three. Testing. Testing.
We create a mental atmosphere.
It's time to jam.
See the place jumping and bumping. See the place jumping and bumping.
We bring you this special radio television broadcast in order to give you the very latest information on an amazing phenomenon.
Is the future.
I'm a real. I'm a real.
All the people on this earth are truly one. We've had loss of signal now.
Testing.
Testing.
Good evening and welcome to the June 12th Redistricting Commission meeting. I'll give a couple of more minutes for some people in the hallway to get in and get settled. I also wanted to make note that I believe Commissioner Gonzalez is joining us online. Do we have Commissioner Gonzalez ready to attend as well? Okay, we'll give him a couple more minutes as well. Thank you all for being here tonight. All right. I will officially call this meeting to order. Today, we're pleased to be here at Lewis Palmer High School, which is in County Commissioner District 1. In accordance with the statute that established the commissioner redistricting process, we will have one listening session in each commissioner district in El Paso County. An important part of each meeting will be to solicit specific feedback from any resident of the commissioner district we're in on any particular day and get their feedback on certain issues. As such, you'll notice on our agenda that the public comment is structured a little differently in that we'll give residents of Commissioner District 1 time to address their concerns first. Specifically, their interest in political competitiveness and maps under construction. So members of the public who live in a different commissioner district will have the opportunity to comment after we've heard from the local residents of District 1. Also, we've agreed that the resident commissioner will serve as the honorary chair for their respective district meetings, and that will be the case for all 5 listening sessions. So that means that this evening, Commissioner Williams will call the agenda items, monitor time, and otherwise run the meeting. With that being said, I'd like to invite Commissioner Holly Williams to take over running this meeting in her district.
Thank you. Good evening. I will have some opening comments, and then we'll turn the time over to Commissioner Vanderwerf and Commissioner Geithner for any of their opening comments. Commissioner Bremer, she still has opening comments, and then hopefully we'll have Commissioner Gonzalez virtual. I wanted to start by stating I misspoke when I made a statement at the last Redistricting Commission and would like to clarify what I meant. I asked staff to bring forward a map based on current commissioner district lines as a starting point for our discussions. I misspoke when I made a statement about minimizing the public's ability to vote me out of office every 4 years. That is the opposite of what I meant to say. I intended to explain that district lines should be drawn so people have an opportunity to elect commissioners who are reflective of and responsible and accountable to their constituents, whether this means a Republican, a Democrat, an unaffiliated, or a member of another party. I am term limited, and my only interest in this process is ensuring that all voices are fully represented regardless of political party affiliation. I look forward to showing the community this board's commitment to comply with all relevant state and federal laws. Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerf, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Williams. I just want to thank everybody for being here. I'm glad you're all here safely. It certainly is a weather phenomenon going on in El Paso County and Colorado Springs here of late. And I look forward to your comments and your input with regard to this redistricting. So that's all I really have at this point. Thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. I'll just say good evening. It's wonderful to see so many folks here this evening. I know that we have a lot of work to do in front of us, but I look forward to hearing the feedback from the public on the first set of maps that will be presented tonight, and look forward to doing everything we can to adhere to that criteria required of us. Thank you.
Commissioner Bremer.
Yes, again, welcome. I am really excited to see interested faces here tonight. We look forward to hearing your input and comments, and I look forward to seeing what work has been done given the last direction. Thank you.
Okay, and Blake, do we have Commissioner Gonzalez online? Okay, Commissioner Gonzalez, do you have any comments? Okay. Okay, Commissioner Gonzalez, can you say it one more time? Okay, thank you. We can hear you just fine. And before we move to agenda item number 2, I did want to thank Lewis Palmer High School, specifically board member Tiffany English and the superintendent of this district. And then also thank our wonderful IT staff for pulling this together as we're having our Board of County Commissioners meeting in the morning here. It takes a lot of people to pull these off-site meetings together, so thank you very much. And if we could have the clerk read item number 2.
Item number 2 is update on the creation of maps based on previous commission direction. Steve Schleicher, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder.
Okay, Mr. Schleicher.
Good evening, Commissioner Steve Schleicher, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. Can you guys hear me? How about now? A lot better. Before I begin, Commissioners, I want to give a hearty thanks to my staff. They've been working nonstop on these 5 maps that have been assigned to us. They sit over here and we work Saturday, got everything done, but a lot of great work went into this.
Thank you, team. We appreciate it.
Actually, I think this is your PowerPoint. Yep, there we go. Let's go to that one. Okay, for the folks in the audience, if you guys hit that scan me, you will have basically be able to pull up the same PowerPoint that I'm going to be sharing. And the reason why that's important, you're going to see some detail on these maps. So if you want, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys take a minute or so to pull that on up. Thanks, Angie. You going to get that QR code? Okay. So we'll go ahead and bring the right QR code. So first and foremost, what we discussed about at our last meeting, the first criteria, we talked about population equality and also our Voting Rights Act. Second criteria, communities of interest and compactness. And the third criteria, political competitiveness. You all, as the commissioners, basically have shared and assigned us 5 maps. The first one was to minimize changes to the election cycle. Map B was to minimize precinct moves. Map C was to keep Security, Whitefield, Hanover, and Fountain together. Map D, you assigned us to look at the I-25 boundary, keep Monument and Black Forest together. And Map E was to move Air Force Academy to District 3, overpopulate District 3 and 5 to account for growth. Now, commissioners, I will say this PowerPoint presentation is over 100 slides. I am not going to go through 100 slides. I feel it's most important that our citizens have a say in this. So I'm going to go through the maps fairly quickly and hit the summation of each and every one.
Just a quick moment.
Yes, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yeah, Mr. Schleicher, just so you're aware, there you've got, I think, a member of your team passing the QR code around in the back. So for the audience, for those of you that want the QR code, she'll be by in just a moment. Thanks.
And Angie, there's a couple over on the left side, over on this side too.
Thanks, Angie. It's okay. Let's see what's going on here. Christian has it. Nor is the enter. Okay. Thanks, Christian. Thanks, guys. Okay, so here is map option A, where we were tasked to minimize changes to the election cycle. As folks are getting the QR code, you can actually take a look in and see where some of those changes have made. And we also have larger ones out there on the easels as well. So for map option A, what you take a look at here is the districts, precincts that have moved from one district to another district and the total population. So for map option A, total of 8 precincts were moved, 21,591 total population were affected. We have 0 super voters and 0 starved voters with this map. What that means is when you have 0 super voters, that means you have an individual, a voter, who just voted for a county commissioner in the 2022 election, and if you move them into another commissioner district, they have an opportunity to vote again in 2024. A starved voter is an individual who has not participated in the election, and they're going to miss another one. So this map option A has 0 super voters, 0 starved voters, and the overall range and deviation is 3.58%. And if you remember per the law, we have to be plus or minus 5%. So District 1, the target deviation is minus 263. District 2, 390. District 3, 3,184. District 4, 338. And District 5, minus 1,851. So we have that all broken down here in this table for folks to sit there and take a look at of what the deviation, the percent, what our total population in the county, and our mean targeted population. We're trying to get every district to 146,555. So the overall range for this map is 3.58%. We also looked per the Voting Rights Act at the total population.
Clerk Schleicher, did anyone want him to stop on that slide to look at it for longer? We're okay. All right. Oh, one person out. Okay, we do have questions later, but does it account for explosive growth in certain areas of the county?
We did account for the explosive growth in El Paso County, especially in Districts 1, District 2, and District 4 with other maps. So the map option A, the Voting Rights Act, as you can see here, this is the population of each district for Hispanic or Latino, Black, White, and Asian. What we looked at is the figures that not included for American Indian, Pacific Islander, multi-ethnic, and other groups due to figures being very low and not relevant to this criteria because they had a very low rate. Here's your voting age, 18 plus. At no time is the total population or the voting age 18 plus or minus 3% in any of the categories. Communities of interest and compactness. So this criteria requires the committee to preserve communities of interest and whole political subdivisions such as our cities and towns as much as reasonably possible and ensure that districts are compact as is reasonably possible. Populations of districts 1, 2, and 4 are lower on this map to allow for future growth, as was just asked. Communities of interest are the I-25 corridor, Fort Carson, El Paso County Eastern Plains, and the districts are sufficiently compact. As you can see here, there are no changes in any of the municipalities of our cities and towns. Here is map option A, political competitiveness. So this is what we looked at was the 2020 U.S. presidential election, 2022 governor, 2022 U.S. Senate, 2022 county sheriff, and the 2022 Secretary of State race. So this is a county as a whole. Here is the baseline for the county as a whole as what we see in each one of the districts. So this is pretty important as we sit there and we look at these maps. We want to make sure we can have competitiveness and we're not sit there and switching a district from +1 Republican to +2 Democrat or vice versa. Here is District 1. As you can sit there and see is District 1 for 2020 U.S. President was +25.05% Republican and all the way through on District 1. District 2, each one of those categories was plus Republican. And just to share with you, the margin of victory differential was calculated by taking the Republican election results percentage minus the Democratic results percent. So a positive differential figure reflects a Republican victory, and a negative differential figure reflects a Democratic victory. Here's District 3, where U.S. President was -4.30% in favor of the Democrats. Same for governor, same for U.S. Senate. County sheriff was +4.77 for Republicans, and Secretary of State was -4.73 Democrat. District 4, governor's race was -0.40 Democrat. The other ones were Republican. District 5, and here is the political competitiveness. It did not change. So, on the map option B, minimize precinct moves. As you can see here, the precincts that were moved, total population. So to summarize, total of 6 precincts were moved. 13,965 total population affected. There are 2,306 super voters, 6,883 starved voters. The overall range and deviation is 1.32%, which is pretty good. District 1, the target deviation is -493. District 2, the target deviation 269. District 3, -741. District 4, minus 226, and District 5, 1,189. Again, here's the summation of all that. Here's the total population. We are seeing a plus or minus 3% increase in the Hispanic and also the white in the districts. So District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4, and District 5. However, we are not seeing a plus or minus 3% on the voting age 18 plus. So communities of interest and compactness, same thing. Communities of interest are the I-25 corridor, Fort Carson, El Paso County, Eastern Plains, and the districts are sufficiently compact. As you see here, there were no changes to any of the municipalities or towns in any of the commissioner districts. Here's the current, which is no different than what we saw in map option A. The political competitiveness baseline, as we're going to be reviewing this 5 times. As you can see, map option B for District 1, all go to Republicans for those 5 races. Same with District 2. District 3, the Democrats won 4 of those races, where the Republicans won the 2022 county sheriff race. District 4, the Republicans won 4 of those races, and the Democrats won the 2022 governor. And District 5, the Democrats won 4 out of the 5 races there. As you can see, there is no changes in the political competitiveness of this map. Map option C, keep Security, Whitefield, Hanover, and Fountain together. As you can see, there was a lot of precinct moves on this one here. Total of 11 precincts were moved, 35,680 total population were affected. We created 2,078 super voters, 5,575 starved voters, and an overall range and deviation of 4.98%. So we are really, really close to that 5%. District 1, the target deviation is 16. District 2, minus 1,689. District 3, 1,408. District 4, minus 3,515. And District 5, 3,778. So as you can see here, when you take a look at it, is District 5 and District 3, we moved a lot into there, where District 5 is sitting at 150,000, District 3 at 147,000. So they are greater than the other 3 districts to allow for future growth. Here's the total population. As in with map option B, we are seeing a plus or minus 3% on the Hispanic or Latino and also the white. Voting age, there is no plus or minus 3%. So we're looking pretty good there. Interest and compactness is population of districts 1, 2, and 4 are lower to allow for future growth. The communities of interest, as before, the I-25 corridor, Fort Carson, El Paso County, Eastern Plains. We did move Fort Carson from District 4 to District 3. I will share with you is I do believe that is a community of interest. We are splitting a school district. So Fountain Fort Carson School District 8 has a lot of schools there on Fort Carson. But as you can see is we are not changing any of the municipalities. They all stay the same within the current commissioner districts. Here's current as the previous 2. Same thing, our baseline. District 1, all went Republican. District 2, all went Republican. District 3, the Democrats won 4 out of the 5 races being studied. District 4, the Republicans took 4 out of the 5 races. And District 5, the Democrats took 4 out of the 5 races on this one. And as you could see, there was no changes in the political competitiveness of this map. Map option D, I-25 boundary, keep Monument and Black Forest together. As you can see, we moved, again, a lot of precincts. So as we're sitting here increasing and we're working down map C, map D, map E, we're moving quite a few precincts. So a total of 15 precincts were moved for this map option. 37,570 total population were affected. We have 18,089 super voters, 10,276 starved voters. The overall range and deviation is 3.8%, so we're right there in the middle. District 1, the target deviation is minus 285. District 2, minus 1,809. District 3, 2,698. District 4, minus 2,867. And District 5, 2,261. So as you can sit there and see again, we built up District 3 and District 5 to allow for Districts 1, 2, and 4 for future growth. Again, as with other map options, is we are seeing an increase of plus or minus 3% on the total population of Hispanic or Latino and also white. Voting age, we are not seeing a plus or minus 3% in any other ethnic categories. So the community of interest and compactness, again, I-25 corridor, Fort Carson, El Paso County, Eastern Plains, these districts are sufficiently compact. And again, what we are looking at is everything here, all the municipalities are staying within the current commissioner districts. As you can see on this one, same current. There's our baseline once more. District 1, Republicans won all 5 races. District 2, Republicans won all 5 races. District 3, the Democrats won 4 out of the 5 races. District 4, the Republicans won all 5 races. And then District 5, the Democrats won 4 out of the 5 races. Here is where the political competitiveness is. We are changing the 2022 governor from Democrat to Republican in District 4. On to map option E. Move Air Force Academy to District 3, overpopulate District 3 and 5 for growth. And as you can see, that's what we were doing with previous maps. This one got really, really busy, as you could probably see, and I apologize. That's why we did the QR code. It's kind of hard to see and put a table on there. We ended up moving a total of 22 precincts, 86,639 total population affected. We created 17,300 super voters, 14,820 starved voters. Overall range and deviation is 4.88%, so we're really close to that 5%. District 1, the target deviation is at 145. District 2 is minus 3,708. District 3, 1,070. District 4, 957. And District 5, 3,448. And as you can see, still doing the same thing is District 5, we boosted that up. At District 3, we boosted that up a little bit, but we're at 4.88% on this deviation. We are really close. Total population, once again, we are sitting here looking at Hispanic, Latino, and white, plus or minus 3% being above that. Voting age, we are not seeing an increase plus or minus 3% in voting age. As you can see here, as previous, population of districts 1, 2, and 4 are lower to allow for future growth in communities of interest. Again, our I-25 corridor, Fort Carson and El Paso County Eastern Plains. And once more, we kept all the municipalities, cities and towns, all within the current commissioner districts. Here's our current, our baseline once again. District 1, all 5 races went Republican. District 2, all 5 races went Republican. District 3, the Democrats took 4 of the 5 races. District 4, Republicans won all 5 races. And District 5, the Democrats won 4 out of the 5 races. However, once again, in District 4, it's switching from Democrat to Republican for the 2022 governor's race. So as you can see here, this is just basically a summary of all 5 maps. What our number of precincts moved, our super voters, our starved voters, our deviation percentage. Have we met the Voting Rights Act? Have we met the communities of interest and compactness? And do I feel we met political competitiveness? On maps A, B, and C, I say yes, but on maps D and E, I say no. So options A, B, and C do little to change underlying competitiveness based on election results. But options D and E changed the outcome of one race, as we just noted. So that was 100 slides we went through real quick. So are there any questions?
Okay, we need to discuss how we were going to wait until later for public questions. Did you want to allow him to come up? I think questions. Okay, let's do questions from the commissioners first, and then we'll have you up in public comment. Clerk Schleicher, I would like you to, when it comes time for public comment, to go ahead and drive so that you can bounce between the 5 maps as people have comments on them. And I'll start off with one comment, and I do have Commissioner Gonzalez in on a text message here if he wants to comment as well. He just has to ping me. So the commissioner districts, if I am correct, that are up for election next year are 2, 3, and 4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. That was my first question. Any other comments by commissioners? Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make sure that I understand some of the data on the charts. And I'd like to go to the maps A through E summary. It's the third to last chart. So when we talk about the deviation percentage, just explain to me again what that means. That is the deviation in population of registered voters between the districts in that proposed scenario. Just tell me what the deviation percentage means.
So we're actually going off a total population per the bill. So we are sitting here, we do not look at active voters, we're going off total population.
Total population, okay. So again, tell me then what does 3.58% and 1.32% mean, and so forth and so on.
So Commissioner, what the overall range and deviation is, we cannot be plus or minus 5% from the highest populated district to the lowest populated district. So that's what that range and deviation percentage means. And when we're sitting there at 4.88%, as you see up here, we are really, really close to that 5%. Where some of the maps we were down at like 1%, so we were looking pretty good. But we cannot be plus or minus 5% from the highest populated commissioner district to the lowest. That's what that deviation is.
Okay, so that's the differential between the highest and the lowest.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then because the chart doesn't have it, I guess it's embedded in the other charts. I mean, I think there's, as long as we stay within that 5% deviation percentage, it's not unreasonable to assume that we work a little bit towards overpopulating 3 and 5 because that's where the growth is least likely to occur. So long as it stays, whatever is done stays initially below the 5%, but then can try to accommodate where the projected growth is so that we stay roughly close. And it's difficult to really truly ascertain that because we could have explosive growth maybe in 1 and 2, and it will end up deviating quite a lot. But we can do that. There's some reasonableness that we can try to overpopulate 3 and 5, I think. And this doesn't really take that into account, this particular chart. That's a different statistic.
What you'd look at is when you look at the population totals for each map that we've done there, Commissioner, that is where we're sitting there, and we're adjusting that to try to get to the mean target population of the 146,555. But on 3 of these maps, we did overpopulate District 3 and also District 5. And to be honest with you, when I walked away from our last meeting with these tasks to do these 5 maps, I'm like, I don't think we're going to get within 5%. And I was pleasantly surprised that all 5 maps, we are in the range of the deviation.
Okay. For all of the different maps, the A through E, do all of them have some reasonable accommodation for overpopulating 3 and 5?
So
even though like the deviation being on B, just 1.3%, that differential would be smaller, of course. I think it would be.
Sorry, Commissioner, we're going through these things real quick.
Sure.
So here's map option A, where you sit there and you take a look at District 3. We did build that one up, but District 5 is light. When we're looking at 144,000, we're at a 3.58% deviation on that one. So we are basically, as you can see there, the target deviation, we're about 1,851 individuals, citizens light, where we would have to add them to meet the mean target population. So we do need to build that one up. We did put a lot of folks into District 3, but we need to go ahead and populate, take away from 4 and 2 and put into 5. Now, map option B, as you can see, we did the same thing with District 5, but District 3 is still short. But we're at a 1.32%, which is a really, really good deviation. But again, my recommendation is we are looking at District 3 being light by 741. We would have to add 2 to meet that mean target population. But I feel we need to take from Districts 1, 2, and 4 to put into District 3. Map option C, we're at 4.98%. So we are really, really close on this one as far as hitting the 5%, but we're still within that parameter. But as you will note, we built up 3 and we built up 5, really, really built up 5 inner city, because there's just really no growth going on there with 5. But we took quite a bit from District 4, District 2, and District 1 to meet that. Map option D, we built up District 3 and District 5. And we're at an overall range and deviation of 3.8%. And we brought down District 4, District 2 quite a bit. That is where we are seeing a lot of our growth. And as your former county assessor, I will tell you it's 2 and 4 that's seeing all the growth. We also brought down District 1, and they are really close to that mean target population. We're only off about 285 citizens within that one. So we are really, really close on that one. Then the last one, map option E, we're at 4.88%, so we're still within the rule of the law. We built up District 5 and we built up District 3 quite a bit. So we have overpopulated District 5 by nearly 3,500 citizens and District 3 by 1,000, and we pulled down District 2. And you could take a look there where we moved a lot out of District 2 and put them into District 5. So hopefully that answers your question there, Commissioner.
No, that does. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Okay, do we have any further questions from commissioners?
And Commissioner, I'm more than happy to drive for the citizens.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Go ahead, Commissioner Geithner.
So I don't have a question for Steve in general, but if I may, I would just say, you know, since we are here in Monument, I know several of these maps include Monument. There's one that was specific to keeping Monument together, and then we have kind of this competition between communities of interest and political competitiveness and all the different criteria. So we can't get everything that everybody wants all into one map, but since we're in this area, I guess I would love to make sure those who live in Monument would maybe address the maps from that perspective of, you know, the map that keeps Monument together, which looks like it's a bit less politically competitive, and give us your perspective on that. That would be very helpful for me.
All right, given that, we will go on to item number 3.
Item number 3 is ESRI Redistricting Tool Demo. Carl Nordstrom, IS Supervisor, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder's Office.
Okay, Mr. Nordstrom.
that thing. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? All right. Thanks for letting me gab for a little bit about this tool that we've been using. It's been very helpful. In the past, this was a very manual process, so using a tool like this speeds up the process so that we can be able to really be able to dig into the kind of data processing that occurs after drawing new district lines. And you'll notice, just kind of to piggyback off of what Steve was talking about on the differential, as you could probably tell, the closer you get to 5%, the more that we are able to pull from districts that need pulling and to add to districts that don't have as much growth. So being close to 5% isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that can probably get us to the goal of measuring the districts that way. The biggest challenge is, like in map A, if the constraint is make sure that there are no super voters or starved voters, you're only trading between districts 1 and 5, which just kind of splits the difference there, and then trading between 2, 3, and 4, which is what makes that total population look the way it does. So I'll be talking about the Esri redistricting tool that we're using. This is something that the public will be able to access themselves. What I'm going to do is, it doesn't really help for you all to see my view of it, so I'm just going to log in as a test user as if I was a member of the public, just to kind of show what that interaction looks like, so that hopefully it's informational for everybody to the extent that is most helpful. So we have on the redistricting website, we do have this URL that will direct people to the tool. At that point, you have the option down here to create an account. And it's a very easy setup to just create an account and put your information in there, choose a password, and then it gets you right in. So I will sign in real quick. So as soon as someone logs into the plan, they're greeted with either the template will open immediately for them, or they're greeted with this recent plans to open a plan. Now, based on some community feedback that we've already received on a few folks that have used the plan, you can just dive right into a template, which will open up the map of the current district lines and have a few built-in layers that I'll show you guys here shortly, or you can just create a plan. If this will work for me. So if we want to just create a plan, it just requires a little bit more input from the user to say, I need 5 districts, I want to be using El Paso County data, and then that lets the user just have a blank slate plan that they can work on. In this case, we're just going to jump into the template plan. So right off the bat, you see the current district lines, and you have a whole bunch of these other lines that are involved here. I told myself it was going to do this. Okay, so for this example, I used the template plan to create this map. So what we'll do is we'll use this one for now. But on the left-hand side here, users will be able to see all these different layers that they can turn on and off. This is the districts as we're drawing them. You have precincts precinct lines, you have Colorado adjusted is the census blocks, which I'll show in just a moment. And then, of course, we have different reference layers. So if we turn those off, we can just, as we need them, add current commissioner districts, add school district lines, Senate district, representative districts, and congressional. So if there's a desire to see what the changes in a plan is affecting as in terms of other districts, people can do that. What I tend to do as I'm working on this is just keep the precinct layer on so that when we do zoom in and we are looking at adding and removing precincts, we can do that with respect to that red line that we see. Oop. So, we'll just go across the top here. So from file, of course, people can just start a brand new map if they want to. They can have existing maps that they've worked on and open. Of course, there's saving as well. There's the ability, if people have used another tool to create a shapefile for districts that they'd like to use, they can import that shapefile as well, so that they can see the work that they've done already in this tool. And that said, if it meets the criteria, they would be able to export an image. The process that we're asking that the public does is export an image of that map that was created to post to public comment so everyone can see that, but then submit the plan through the Submit tab on the tool. What the Submit plan will do is it will go through the process, I've already submitted this one, but it will go through the process of checking the integrity of the map so that people can't just create any old map that they want and submit, just flood the submissions with maps that don't meet that criteria. And I'll show you that in just a moment. So that kind of goes through the file tab there. The Learn tab is exactly what it says. There's some useful tools in there. We've also thrown some stuff onto the website in terms of videos and some Esri created learning guides that have been really helpful to us in really being able to quickly learn how to use this tool usefully. Our view tabs it's a lot like Office products where you can display different types of labels, the different things that people would want to see either in their data or on the map itself. If I get rid of this, under Create, what we have is a demographics option. Demographics option allows people to look at total population, look at the different breakdowns of total population by ethnicity and voting age population by ethnicity. So all of these figures and percentages, if people would like to see the percentages of those figures as well in their current map, will show up across the bottom here. And while this isn't the most useful way to look at it, there is the option to also pull away this data so that you can see it in a different screen. So, but as you're making changes in a map, all of these figures are going to be updated with those population changes so that you can see what that total population is, your deviation, and then start seeing your breakdowns by ethnicity. So in terms of actually working within the tool and selecting precincts to move from one district to the other. If we were to, let's see, if we were to use, here's a good example right here. If we were to zoom in here, I think this is precinct 164, okay. Right up top here, so if we were considering handing 164 over to District 1 from District 5, you'll see all of these lines here within are the census blocks. Census blocks are kind of the foundation for population data. Unfortunately, precincts are not. However, this tool has the overlay of the precincts so that as we are adding and removing precincts from districts, we are able to grab them by their groups of census blocks so that as we get, oops, that's not right, my bad. And you can quickly undo. So if I was going to District 1 and I wanted to grab this precinct, I can do so. And lots of times what I end up doing is I just end up removing the view of those census blocks so I can have a bit more of a clear view of what I am grabbing for that precinct. I'm doing it on a laptop, so it's a lot faster if you got a mouse on hand. So in that case, we've moved 164 over from one district to the other. It's usually just a couple clicks. For some precincts, it's 1, maybe 2 clicks, and it's a pretty easy process. At that point, of course, users can keep reviewing their data down below to see how that has affected things. Excuse me. And so as we go through the process of creating here, there are many different options available. I don't want to get into every single one of them, but if there are folks that have an issue, by all means, we have a reference email to send us questions and ask about the tool. But this is an area where lots of people are going to be working. You can end up doing you can end up kind of locking in some of your choices here. You can end up setting scales on when you'd like to see different labels and stuff like that. So once someone feels comfortable that they have a map that is ready for submission, this is where that check integrity comes into play. And what this is going through is it's going down the list of all the things that we want to make sure that we're checking. In this case, we're not meeting that 5%. At some point, we are above or below 5%. So this check, and what we usually end up running into for folks is going to be this deviation. There might be some null assignments, but what it allows you to do is select the details on the side here if there's anything that is not meeting the criteria, so that it can zoom into that wherever the issue is occurring, so that they can take a closer look at it. This is the integrity test that will go into play when maps are submitted. So as soon as someone submits a map here, it's going to go down the line and check those off. If they're all green, it'll allow that user to hit OK and submit it to us. And we'll be able to see all of those on our side in this tool. So review also allows people to look at, there's different reports that you can get to view the breakdowns of population. And you can also open another plan. In this case, lots of times I'll open up that official plan or the current commissioner districts just so that I can overlay on top of my plan and see, once I zoom in, that's when we start seeing sorry, this laptop mouse is getting me. You can see right there, it's going to hash. That's the difference between the two maps. When comparing maps, users can also create groups together. If you've got other people that are working together and you want to compare and contrast your maps, you can create groups and share between those groups. And that using this review tool really is helpful to be able to stack someone's map on top of yours and just see where the differences are. And it's what we're going to be doing probably moving forward, as we have seen we've seen good things out of A and B and good things out of C and D, but maybe not just exclusive to each of them, maybe a combination of the two. We'll probably be doing a lot more of that as well. So that's the share stuff is pretty user friendly as far as sharing and then being able to see who's accessed and have comments. And then of course, submitting is the last piece here. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Nordstrom, what is your email address if people have questions?
We have, let me make sure. Let me just make sure I get this right.
And at the same time, while you were looking that up, I will ask my question of the county attorney. I was just going to ask him, are citizens allowed to go in and talk to Mr. Nordstrom when they're drawing their own maps?
Madam Chair, staff working on development maps are not able to speak with members of the public about those maps.
Okay, and what about questions about how to use Esri, in a generic fashion? Should they just rely on the videos on the Esri website?
No, ma'am, the prohibition actually just hangs on development of maps themselves. So guidance on how to use a tool that would ultimately be used to develop maps would be permissible.
Okay, so that answers that question. At the same time, I may have a separate question for Mr. Schleicher, and that was, I know we did have one person here who submitted a map. I don't know if she's here. Catherine Zukas, and what I'm wanting to hear is the pleasure of the board as far as individuals when they submit maps. I would like the same criteria that we're reviewing for the 5 maps we have here to be added to their maps on the public website so that that is open and public record. And I'm wondering, one, the pleasure of the board on that, because I think that that is a valuable tool for us to have. And I know I read through and saw Ms. Zuka's map, so. And you can go ahead, Clerk Schleicher. Go ahead, Commissioner Bremer. You have a question?
I was just going to say, on the surface, that does sound good and allows us to compare apples to apples, so to speak. But I would like to hear how much extra work that would be, or if that tool, that piece is already integrated into Esri and other pieces of software that might make that process simpler, or whether the charts that you presented today were completely and entirely manual. I just would like to understand the amount of work going into converting the information we see in this format, in this 100-page presentation today, versus what the public is able to submit. How much work does it take to get it apples to apples for us?
So, commissioners, it's not that much work. When we sit there and we have citizens submitting maps and want to go ahead and put the numbers that you've just seen on the 5 different maps, that is not a hard task to do. Over the last several weeks from our last meeting, we have built those Excel spreadsheets where we put that information in there and we're double checking the numbers. Because what you don't want to have is when you look at an election going, okay, this one comes up at 103%. What's going on there? But with that being said, is if the citizens submit that information and if the board directs I and my office to do that, we have no problem putting that information together for you.
Okay, Commissioner Geithner, then Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you. So I'm just going to add to that. I agree. I think that there's value in that comparison, and that may be fine if there are 5, 10, 20 maps, but 200 maps being submitted might get to the point. So I would say I would appreciate that kind of comparison as well, but I think we may have to kind of see how many maps that there are moving forward, and if there does seem to be a very large number of maps submitted, we may have to kind of go to a specific ask or find some sort of criteria to sift through that great number so that we can get the most out of our time, is my thought.
Well, and commissioners, to keep in mind, it took us 2 weeks to work on 5. And, and of course, speeding through 100 PowerPoint slides where I shared that with a couple citizens, they were like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? But if we sit there within the time frame, if we're looking at 5 to 6 different maps, if, some are what we have currently come up with by combining some and a couple from the citizens, that is pretty easily to do.
Okay, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple of questions. The first one is, these are real questions about using the Esri tool. So on the first question is, there's obviously a save feature, so let's be hopeful that that works successfully and well on a regular basis, because as citizens, or either citizens or commissioners for that matter, might be trying to tinker around and so forth, you want to make sure that when you save it, it actually really is saved and that you can pull it back up later, because maybe you have to step away and then you can come back. So I'm hopeful that the answer to that is it will work well.
Yes.
Okay, and then there was also, once you feel like you're done, you've got what you think your design is that you want to submit. I think I saw a submit button. So I'm interested in what happens when either a commissioner or a citizen pushes that submit button? Like, where does it go? Who gets it? And how does it come to this board for evaluation? So that's a question of the process. What happens after you submit? And
So-
also, like, do you get an acknowledgement of receipt of
We do.
submittal? Because sometimes if you send it and you get nothing back, and then you're like, I'm not 100% sure if it got sent.
Well, the acknowledgement that the user will have is that they will be able to, if they attempt to submit again, like this map was already submitted, it'll let you know that the map was submitted. We receive an email in the general mailbox that I'll bring up again, also saying that a plan was submitted. We have the ability to see submitted plans in this essentially our open window here. So we have a folder on our side that says submitted plans, and it'll just give a list off here. It'll say who that owner was, if they put in a description of the plan. And we have some timestamps so that we can keep track of that. What the additional ask that we've made that's in the press release and I believe on the redistricting website is that whenever someone does submit, since this doesn't submit a plan to everyone using the tool, if people can export from the file here, if people can export an image of their map and upload that in the public comment, that will allow other people to see as well. And it'll also allow us, because we're informed whenever there is a public comment, it'll also allow us to see if there are any gaps. If someone said, hey, I submitted something and I submitted it on the public comment, but no one's addressed anything that I've been talking about or anything like that, we can go back and marry those up so that we know that when someone submitted it internally to us, that there was also a public submission as well.
Okay, great. Follow on for that. By the way, appreciate the fact these things are pretty sensitive, these mics, aren't they? So there's two ways to store and I guess to submit a map that you worked on. One is through the Esri tool itself, and the other one is to create an image and then send that into comments. So
yes,
maybe this might...
and you can see there's multiple ways to export. I think maybe it's easiest just right off the bat for everyone to see a map to do an image, but if people want to share shape files of that within, you can export that. There's a KML file which you can open in
Well, I like the fact that
Google.
you can make an image of it, because then that, I presume you can then save that on your own PC or something, and then you can share that with your friends.
Sure.
I would imagine, right?
Yep. Any of these exports you can share pretty easily with people in either in many
But
different
this may be
formats.
maybe a legal question for the county attorney. So I'm kind of perceiving there's two input processes. One is posting it as an Esri map, and the other one is taking an image of it and then submitting it as public comments. Are both of those going to be accepted as valid inputs for citizen input, or is one complicated and the other one's easier? Or, I just want to make sure we know what the process is.
And Commissioner, from a legal perspective, I don't have concerns about either of those things, but there may be practical concerns with being able to read something submitted in the alternative. I'd probably defer to Clerk and Recorder Schleicher for that practical concern.
I would agree. And just to add on to that is the 5 maps that we showed today to the public are going to be put out there as images.
Okay, Commissioner Bremer.
Thank you. And I believe, just to clarify that a bit, that citizens can print out and draw their own maps. They don't have to use this tool. This tool helps make sure that there is, that it's meeting the criteria, all the ones that we've talked about. But truthfully, it can come in the public comment in any form that is convenient to the person wanting to provide input, and that will be considered as public input.
And we've noticed that we've had public comment on that we've reacted to here with our imports option as well, that folks are using other tools as well. There's free tools out there that people are using. So being able to import a shapefile from those other tools should also be a useful way to, if they're just looking to simply submit it through the tool. But like you said, by all means, if you don't want to use this tool at all, yeah, I don't think anybody's requiring it.
Well, and just as a reminder, commissioners, is as I shared in our initial meeting, my office is not charging for any maps. So if they want commissioner district maps, House district, Senate district, school district, we're providing that for free. So, you know, putting that out there, I know folks really like to have those maps on their kitchen table. I applaud everybody that was involved in putting this out there. This is the first time El Paso County is using a tool like this where we can get up-to-date data automatically when we move precincts. We used to have to do it hand calculation, look at a lot of different things. It was, you know, extremely time consuming, took a lot of man hours, but as you can sit there and see is how simple it was to move a precinct. And when we're sitting there looking at total population, voting age population, ethnicities, that is automatically being updated.
Thank you. And I guess the important thing to note is that regardless of which format, which tool, how you want to provide your input, that the input itself needs to be provided on that public input site.
Correct.
And also that the maps as they exist now are available on the redistricting website as well for people to print at their home printers if they would like as well. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in the chairman's discretion, I know we had one gentleman with a question. By show of hands, who else may have questions still? Okay, we have a couple people with questions. So I just need to let you know first, this is the first time we've seen these maps tonight as well. And I want to give everybody maybe 15 minutes to digest them. Mr. Klafke is not here. Mr. Martin, can you stand up? Okay, Mr. Martin is here on behalf of the clerk and recorder. And if we take a 15-minute break, our attorney's here, but remember you can't communicate with us or Clerk Schleicher. And so let's take a 15-minute break. That gives you all a chance to go out and look at the maps in detail before we move on, and also a chance for a restroom break. So with that, we will recess for 15 minutes until 6:50. Thank you. We're in recess.
We can't ask you any questions, huh?
We can talk about your camera.
With the QR code, there's not really any Wi-Fi here, and they don't have much cell service.
So
Minute warning. Okay, am I on now? All right, we will call everybody back into session. I have been told that if you get about 2 inches away from the mic, you sound better. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 4A, 5A, and 5B, and then during 5C, we'll address the 3 people who still have questions first, okay? So that we can get those. We'll try to be a little bit more lenient on 5C, but we're still gonna try to uphold our 3-minute time limit, so. All right, so number 4, clerk.
Item number 4 is upcoming meetings, recommendations, and general updates. Ryan Parcell, Executive Director, Government Affairs. 4A, recommendation to change the deadline for members of the public to submit maps through the El Paso County Redistricting website.
Okay, Mr. Parcell.
All right, thank you. Well, that is close. All right. My name is Ryan Parcell. I don't have 100 slides today, but I'll go through this here. And before I get started, I just wanted to emphasize something that Clerk and Recorder Schleicher and Carl Nordstrom talked about, which is the on the Esri front, the amount of time that went in getting that tool to work. It feels a little bit like spending 8 hours cooking Thanksgiving for everybody to eat in 10 minutes. But the whole crew there did such a nice job of getting that to work properly. So just real quickly for my presentation, I'll just go over the dates again, revisit the deadline status, and talk through a recommendation. So for anybody here in the audience or tuning in from at home, our next meeting is going to be June 21st, 2023. It's going to be a Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. It'll be the District 2 meeting, and that will be held at Mountain View Academy, and the address is listed there. The meeting after that will be on July 6th, also at 5:30 p.m. That'll be the District 4 meeting at Mesa Ridge High School. Following that, July 10th, 2023 will be the District 3 meeting located at Cheyenne Mountain High School, followed by our District 5 meeting at the Regional Development Center on Monday, July 17th. And it's that July 17th date that I wanted to key in on for just a moment, because if we were to look at our deadline status, per the resolution that established the Redistricting Commission, the May 12th deadline for getting the website established has already been completed, but July 14th is the deadline for members of the public to submit their plans via the website. However, since we have our last district meeting on July 17th, we had the thought that if somebody were to attend a district meeting on July 14th, or I'm sorry, on July 17th, and be so inclined to submit their own plan, with the deadlines as they stand now, they wouldn't be able to do so at that meeting. The opportunity for them to submit their own plan would already be closed by a couple of days. And so we had the recommendation that we want to put forward to you guys that we adjust the July 14th date slightly to extend it out to some date after the July 17th meeting. For anybody that may be curious about that, once we go through the 5 district meetings, there will then have to be a meeting to discuss any additional direction that the Redistricting Commission would want to give staff, and then a meeting to communicate which plan or plans are in the final consideration, and then a meeting to vote on the final plan. So that July 17th District 5 meeting will not be the last redistricting meeting. There will be a couple of additional ones to finish out the process, but we are recommending that we move that date slightly. But just to recap, we are still in progress for our August 4th deadline. We'll certainly meet that to hold all 5 Commissioner District meetings. August 8th is the deadline for the Redistricting Commission to give any additional plan requests to the staff. August 11th is the last date for members of the public to submit written comments on any plans under consideration. And then August 15th is our target date for final adoption. So let me pause there and see if you have any questions about our recommendation.
Okay, so my first question is, what date would you propose be the last date for the public to submit maps?
Thank you, Commissioner. When we wrote a proposed resolution, I threw in the date of the 19th. We are not married to that in any way, shape, or form. I think anytime that week, anytime during the week of the 17th would be fine. We probably want to give it at least a couple of days after the meeting on Monday the 17th. If we go much beyond Friday, we just want to make sure that that we're giving ample time for staff to work on any additional planned recommendations or research that need to be done before the next meeting, should the commission want to take a closer look at any plan.
Commissioner Bremer.
I'm just digesting the proposed date that you just said, given what we just were presented with the Esri tool and the slight learning curve that will be associated with that, and also as the Commissioner District 5 representative, I I would like to see giving our citizens through the weekend. And if it's amenable to propose July 24th, that would be Monday. Does that give staff ample time during that week and the following? Okay.
Yeah, I got the head nod from Clerk and Recorder Schleicher, so that's the important one on that.
Do you need that in the form of a motion?
Yes, County Attorney?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I move to amend our resolution setting deadlines that was passed on 4/18 and changing the deadline date for last day for the public to submit plans via the website instead to July 24th.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion by commissioners? And is Commissioner Gonzalez back? Okay, good. All right, seeing no further discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner. Aye. Commissioner Williams votes aye. Commissioner Gonzalez. Okay, and Chair Bremer.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 5-0. So we will extend that deadline in the resolution to July 24th for the submittal of maps. Any other business we need to conclude with you, Mr. Parcell?
None that I see at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Rowe, would you go ahead and read item number 5A?
Item number 5 is public comment. 5A, the Redistricting Commission will afford up to 3 minutes for County Commissioner District 1 residents for comments pertaining to 1, what communities of interest exist within the current County Commissioner District 1, 2, comments pertaining to the political competitiveness of County Commissioner District 1, and or 3, other comments related to County Commissioner District 1 redistricting.
Okay, this is the time for public comment. If you, I believe it's that, Attorney Hodges, is that if you currently reside in Commissioner 1?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, could you repeat that?
Are we looking at individuals who currently reside in the Commissioner 1 as of today to speak during this item?
Correct, under 5A.
Okay. Are there any individuals here? Ms. Landgraf, okay, come on up. And if you could, when you come up, state your name and your address clearly for the record in case we didn't get you signed in. And if you did not sign in, we're going to ask you to sign in after you speak up in the hallway. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Lois Landgraf. I live at 1054 Kelso Place. You'll have to excuse my voice. I do live in the district, but I did want to speak to one of the maps. I think it was just one of the maps that moved. So I'm really speaking to District 4. That's acceptable. One of the maps moved Fort Carson out of District 4. I would really like you to consider keeping Fort Carson aligned with Fountain, Security, Widefield. That is definitely one community of interest. It's a huge military population. Fountain and their political process does a lot with Fort Carson, and I think it would be really unfortunate to change that. We fought very hard to keep it together with the House District during redistricting, and I would like you to consider whatever map keeps that together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That is former Representative Landgraf, who did used to represent the area. All right, next.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is John Mickus, and I reside at 16948 Park Trail Drive in Monument in County Commission District 1. I did have some prepared remarks, and I'm going to go ahead and submit those for comment, but after seeing the Clerk and Recorder's presentation, I had some specific remarks that I wanted to make around those. There really are 5. One, I saw the Clerk and Recorder's presentation about the measures of competitiveness. And 4 of the 5 measures were statewide or national elections, the 2020 presidential and 3 2022 statewide offices. And only one measure of competitiveness was a local election, the sheriff's department. Now, that is a bit of skewing, a bit of, I think, even cherry picking, because that particular 2020 was a year in which the Republican presidential candidate had a lower performance here in El Paso County, and in 2022 there was a surge at the statewide. So I'm not sure that those races are really the best measures of political competitiveness, and I would encourage you to take a look at using, in addition to the sheriff's office, using like the clerk and recorder's race or using the assessor's race, which will give you a better measure of, I think, local competitiveness. The second comment I have is I noticed that with respect to communities of interest, that towns were enumerated, and that's great. The law does specify that towns are community of interest, but it doesn't limit communities of interest to towns. And what I saw missing was some of the urban neighborhoods, which are really well defined, like Patty Jewett and Southeast Colorado Springs. And as I look through all of the maps that are there, I saw precincts, I saw none of the maps that included Patty Jewett in its whole. And a quick look at the Southeast Colorado Springs, I saw the same there. So I'd encourage you to think about urban neighborhoods also as communities of interest. Thirdly, I'd encourage you to stay laser focused on the Voting Rights Act and the provisions there. I saw the measures that the clerk and reporter put up in aggregate, but that can, what's really important is what's happening in terms of the dilution of vote. I would encourage you to take a look at those districts that have the highest proportion, those precincts that have the highest proportion of Black and Latino voters that are contiguous. What you're going to find in the current maps is that they're split between 3 county commission districts, 2, 3, and 5, effectively diluting the voting impact of historically disadvantaged voters. So the measure that we were shown is not, I think, the best measure to compare how these would react to the Voting Rights Act. I also have comments about the overpopulation of 3 and 5. I understand why you're doing it. I just wanted to point out that that also impacts competitiveness because those 2 districts are the ones that are most Democratic leaning. So therefore, by overpopulating theirs, it's a bit stacking. I understand the reason, but it's something to be conscious of. And finally, I thank you for your time. Commissioner Bremer, you asked about Monument. I live in the town of Monument, and I do believe that Monument should be within one political district. I live in precinct 303. Across the street is precinct 305. It's a different political district. I recognize that that happened in 2017 after the 2016 county commission race. It's a false question, though. I do want them together, but the way that map is labeled, there are other things in that map that are problematic. So just by me saying, yes, I like the map that has those 2 precincts together in Monument, doesn't mean that I necessarily think that that's the best map. But as a general principle, I do think the town of Monument should be in the same county commission district. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. The next person.
Good evening. My name is James Howell. I'm a Monument resident since 1992, 1647 Fallen Leaf Way. I'm in Commission District 1. So at present, as others have mentioned, Monument is split between 2 commission districts. Splitting the community up this way is just not in the best interest of the residents. We've already sort of defined the idea of community of interest. The current maps fail that test. For example, District 3 lumps Monument voters west of I-25 in with voters in Manitou Springs, which has a different school district, different utility providers, different local economy. So, so voters west of I-25 have much more in common with voters east of I-25 than they do with with Manitou Springs. It's hard to avoid the conclusion that District 3 boundaries were drawn to create a safe seat and not to best represent the residents. The new maps, even option D, don't fix this problem. The state law that HB 211047 also specifies that county commission districts be held to the same standards codified in amendments Y and Z, which call for the use of an independent commission to be used to draw district boundaries. Having the existing commissioners draw district boundaries does not meet that test. When you passed Resolution 23, you voted to ignore state law and give yourselves the ability to set the district boundaries that benefit you. In America, the voters have the right to choose their representatives. You've chosen the opposite path, giving the representatives the power to choose their voters. I believe your voters would be much better served by an independent commission, drawing the commission district boundaries from the perspective of the voters, not the perspective of the commissioners. So I think there's an inherent conflict of interest in the process that you're using here. When politicians succeed in giving themselves the power to choose their voters, they free themselves from the need to listen to those voters. They can devote themselves solely to their donors because they know their seats are secure. Voters in the Tri-Lakes area that want to see growth and development managed differently in unincorporated El Paso County should know there won't be significant change on that score until the county commission districts are redrawn fairly. So I think you need to go back to the drawing board and don't start with the existing maps. They don't fix the problem that's of most concern to this community. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Hodges, did you want to answer some of the questions brought up in those comments?
Madam Chair, I'd like to reserve providing legal advice. I prefer not to do that in a public forum.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, sir. We're ready for you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ryan Hahn, and I'm here tonight as a concerned resident of El Paso County District 1. I live at 1350 Kelly Johnson Boulevard, apartment 407. It's no secret with how the county is currently districted that it is gerrymandered in a way that dilutes black and brown voters. In the way, the southeast part of the county, for example, is made up of 40% minorities, yet the GOP-controlled county commission has in the past chosen maps in El Paso County so that the southeast part is split among three districts. At the same time, maps that are being presented today have emphasized keeping whiter and more conservative communities such as Monument and Black Forest together, but have not recognized black and brown communities such as Southeast Colorado Springs as communities of interest. Previous maps have violated the Civil Rights Act of 1965 as well, according to a recent Supreme Court ruling. It is crucial for the voting rights of all residents of Colorado Springs for the County Commission to follow these guidelines and vote on a district map that is fair, competitive, and meets all guidelines. This is also not about Democrats or Republicans, but rather making sure that we are a fair democracy with fair representation for all. I strongly urge you all to do the right thing and choose a map that would represent all citizens of El Paso County. Additionally, I am concerned about how District 5's only opportunity for public comment is on a weekday at 9 a.m. As a largely working class community, this is blatant disenfranchisement, anti-democratic actions taken against our fellow residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, anyone else living in Commissioner 1? Come on down.
Hello, my name is Harrison. I live here in Monument 15555. Can't think that's all the fives, Candle Creek Drive. And I just wanted to talk about some of the statements that were made and about the redistricting. It is well known to probably everyone here that politicians do have their respective priorities and agendas, which are reflected in what they say and do. We know that politicians, sorry, I wrote this in my car. We know that politicians speak re-election to further their goals of their constituents, particularly their donors and themselves. While I'm sure any Freudian slips that make this obvious may be unfortunate for you, I want you to be aware that voters and members of this community are not fooled. I think I can speak on behalf of my comrades, particularly those that live in more diverse parts of El Paso County than Monument, that we pay attention and we are active in improving the lives of those in our community. We want everyone's voice to be heard in a way that is fair for everyone, much as was mentioned for Southeast Colorado Springs. If I haven't been clear, I hope that we can ensure a way that does not silence these communities and divide these communities, specifically in the interests of your donors, particularly in the development industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else in Commissioner District 1 on speaking to item number 5A? Okay, one more. Thank you.
Good evening. My civic and political passion was formed early on by my grandfather, who was a Republican and always had an 8x10 photograph hanging in his home of the president. When Bill Clinton was in office, I was at my grandfather's house when he had a friend visiting, and the friend pointed to the picture and said, "Why do you have a picture of Slick Willie on your wall?" And my grandfather said very simply, "He's our president." Boy, those days are over. My grandfather's answer was simple. His answer respected fairness, and it respected the outcome of our democratic processes. His answer was good, it was right, and it was true. In 2016, I worked on Electra Johnson's campaign in CC3, very proudly. I believe that campaign inspired the gerrymandering that was mentioned before when precinct lines were drawn. I was able to support that race because no one was running in my district that I could support. That was by design. At that time, I was compelled to support a campaign that represented an opportunity to have a different voice at the table. There had not been a different voice at the table, and there has not been a different voice at the table since the 70s. Diverse problems and diverse challenges require diverse solutions, and El Paso County is growing and becoming more diverse. It is in the best interest of the entire El Paso County community that a diverse body be represented at the commissioner level. My ask is a simple one. Do what you know is right and give the voters of El Paso County what they deserve. Start with considering fairness when drawing the CC boundaries. The Supreme Court decided last week that it is in the best interest of not just the communities, but also in the interest of preserving and protecting our democratic processes to consider what is fair, as well as what is good and what is right and what is true. It was what our founders intended, and it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Ma'am, can I just ask you to give your name and address?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tracy Woods, 307 Whistler Creek Court, 80132.
Okay, thank you, Miss. All right, now, if I'm correct, may we go on to item B?
Item number 5B, the Redistricting Commission will afford up to 3 minutes for El Paso County residents who reside outside of County Commissioner District 1 for comments related to redistricting.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Armendariz Unzueta, aka Jax. I am a District 5 voter. The last time I provided public comment before this board, its members chose to center themselves and talk about a graffitied, bigoted church after I asked for accountability with regard to the Club Q white supremacist domestic terrorist attack through tears for my murdered neighbors and traumatized community. I hope we can do better today. As a Southeast Colorado Springs resident, I spent the gas money to drive the half hour to comment during this first redistricting public hearing because of the consequential nature of the redistricting process. The board should know that for my individual public comments, there are at least a half dozen or more of my neighbors who would also wish to comment, but may not have the privilege or accessibility that allows them to reach this part of town. I'm here to advocate for my Southeast neighborhood as a community of interest, which disappointingly I noted was not mentioned anywhere in the maps presented today. Let me be clear that this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue of justice, integrity, and democracy. The new County Commission district map must end the division of Southeast among 3 districts. This disenfranchisement has negatively impacted our community for numbers of years. As this board is likely aware, we are a more than 40% minority area, and we painfully have some of the lowest voter turnout in town. So I call on this board to end the gerrymandering of Southeast Colorado Springs in the new district map you insisted on having the responsibility of drawing. One of the most disturbing effects of Southeast being gerrymandered is that my community of color is forced to pay taxes into the county's development schemes without having a fair shot at getting representation on the board. End this injustice now. You should also know that voters can see right through the excuses of the board that its members won't be up for re-election themselves. Any effort to preserve conservative power in El Paso County elected offices via gerrymandering is appalling and illegal. I am also compelled to include this burning question in my comments today. Why is it that my County District 5 public hearing, an opportunity for the district with the most minority precincts to engage, is the only one scheduled at 9 a.m. on a weekday? As a largely working class community, this is a form of disenfranchisement in the redistricting process. Nevertheless, we persist. In Southeast last month, we proudly held a community ballot block party to encourage a higher turnout in the ultimately successful municipal runoff election. This board will be culpable in continuing a significant injustice against Southeast if it adopts a map that continues to dilute the vote of our community of interest. Overall, I'm here today to remind you that you can do the right thing as county commissioners during this process. It's possible to choose a map that follows the law as well as your own suggestions and is fairly drawn to be competitive, compact, and contiguous and meet population deviation requirements. I also wish to express my support for the map submitted by the member of the public, Catherine Zukas, which was cited earlier today. We, the people of Southeast, call for the end to our disenfranchisement as a community of color. Respect our votes.
And we have we have 2 people online. Were you able to get the name and address of that individual, Nancy? Were you able to get the name and address of that individual who spoke?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right. Ma'am, we'll have you speak, and then we're going to go to the 2 people online after that. Okay?
Hi, I'm Amy Pascal. I live at 3372 Skywatch Heights. It's in District 3. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you for putting out the maps. I know they're a lot of work, and I very much appreciate having public access to the Esri tool. Super excited about that. What I came to talk about is fair representation. Fair representation is the foundation of democracy. I'm here today to make the plea that this redistricting process result in fair representation. The Board of County Commissioners has been 100% Republican for 50 years. That's not fair representation. What would fair representation look like? As of June 5th, 2023, voters of El Paso County are 18% Democratic, 31% Republican, and 49% unaffiliated based on their voter registration affiliation. They are not 100% Republican or even half Republican. And as was pointed out in an earlier redistricting meeting, with nearly half of registered voters unaffiliated, it is challenging to determine where true affiliations lie. And of course, it can depend on the race and on the candidate. However, I think recent elections with county-wide results are a good place to look for guidance. In the 2022 election, Democratic candidates earned an average of 39% of the vote in county-wide offices, where there was a contest, and an average of 43% of the vote in statewide offices. Recently, Tom Cronin and Bob Levy wrote an op-ed in the Gazette calling for 3 Democratic districts. I'm not sure where the math comes. I'm not sure that the math is there to support 3 Democratic districts while complying with the roughly equal population, contiguousness, compactness, and communities of interest. 2 Democrat majority, or at least competitive districts, is doable. And by competitive, I mean down no more than 2 percentage points for Democrats. I'm not asking for districts gerrymandered as safe and Democratic districts, like meaning up 5+ points. I'm asking for fairness and proportionate representation. So I saw the maps that came out today. Obviously, I didn't have much time to look at them, but it looks like competitiveness really didn't change much. And I know that people say, some people will argue, hey, if Democrats had better candidates, maybe they'd win. I think maybe we'd have more good candidates run if people thought they might have a chance to win. You can take the 40% or so of Democrats and dilute them across all of the districts and make sure that no Democrats get elected. I know that the presentation here today said we have 2 competitive districts. If so, explain why we have never had a single Democrat in 50 years. I would say empirical evidence says otherwise. What I would suggest here is that our competitive measurements are probably not very good. My time is over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the first person online, Blake. Okay. Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Over 35 years. I presently lived 19 years in Colorado City. And
Did we lose her? Now we can't hear you. So, okay, go ahead. We can hear you.
my name is Pamela. In 1950, in the 50+ years, I have commissioner. In the 50+ years, I have voted in allowing voters in my neighborhood to join together with other nearby historic neighborhoods such as Patty Jewett, the West Side, and the Broadmoor, our voices and votes have been diluted for far too long by gerrymandering. These historic neighborhoods share similar concerns and often face similar problems distinct to historic homes, trees, landscaping, streets, and character, and are a community of interest. Data supports the creation of politically competitive districts and my neighbors and I should have the opportunity to vote in competitive districts rather than in districts drawn to favor one political party over another. Things are changing in El Paso County and the great state of Colorado. In the past, our citizens could do little to prevent this voter suppression. But now House Bill 211047 has been passed and signed into law. Tonight, I take note that no Democrats are on this redistricting committee, which is not an independent commission. Tonight, I am asking the self-appointed members of this redistricting committee to make a promise to the citizens of El Paso County. I am asking you to promise that the members of this committee will personally pay all legal costs and attorney's fees that are likely to result if your decisions are challenged in court because you fail to act in good faith and to follow the law by complying with HB 211047. If you truly believe you are acting in a fair, non-political, and unbiased manner, then you should have no problem making this promise. If, however, you are merely going through the motions of checking the boxes on your way to once again gerrymandering, which I suspect, based on the continued carving up of my neighborhood and separation of it from contiguous like neighborhoods, then why should the citizens of El Paso County be stuck having their hard-earned taxpayer dollars wasted defending politically motivated shenanigans? As my father, a 40-plus year resident of El Paso County, used to say, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So with that, we're going to go on to item C. Okay, come on up.
So first off, I just want to say that changing precincts is not something that comes up in amendments Y and Z and HB 211047 as like a super voter or a voter that's been starved. I know personally, if I didn't have to have Stan represent me, but I wasn't able to vote, I would be happy to allow other people to vote somebody that would represent me better. So I just wanted to point that out, that that's not a metric that's generally used when it comes to fair redistricting. That's one that apparently you guys have put in place, but I'm not sure where it's coming from. Secondly, I'm Zuri Horwitz. I live at 1920 West Bijou Street, Colorado Springs, Colorado, in Old Colorado City. That was my mom. So I was born in Colorado Springs, went to Cheyenne Mountain High School, and also Colorado College. I live in Old Colorado City in the walkable historical part of town on the Colorado Ave corridor. We have a lot in common with Manitou, downtown, the Old North End, and Patty Jewett. We have nothing in common with Monument. The only time I'm here is driving through or stopping at the Park and Go for the Bustang stop. We don't have much in common with Southeast Colorado Springs, which is sadly not walkable at all and is overrun with concrete and pavement. Even with these obstacles, Southeast Colorado Springs has a strong culture and large minority population, all its own, and it's unfair that it's gerrymandered between districts 5, 2, and 4. And I'm very surprised that that somehow didn't come up in any of the maps, and that somehow those maps passed it muster. Even when you united Monument, it actually made it less likely that the map was going to pass muster, which is confusing to me. I'm just very confused about what your metrics are to unite communities of interest and to make sure that minorities are represented in a cohesive way. I would like to know what metrics you're using because it doesn't make sense. One of the most important points of House Bill 211047 is that districts are drawn to ensure representation of the various communities of interest and to maximize the number of competitive districts. There should be 2 competitive districts in El Paso County with minimal changes to the map. And though uniting the Eastern Plains would make a lot more sense, but I won't get to that. Districts 3 and 5 would be representative of communities of interest and maximize competitive districts. If Monument was reunited into District 1, Patty Jewett was reunited into District 3, and all of Southeast Colorado Springs was united in District 5, which is shown in Kitty Zukas's map in public comments. If you use metrics like Paulus's performance in the last election, or where a Republican ran an extremely weak as an extremely weak candidate. I don't even know their name, and I thought they were a man, but it turns out they were a woman. For competitiveness, instead of county level races, you will be misrepresenting the competitiveness of the districts. Even though you appointed yourselves the Redistricting Commission, and the last time you redistricted in 2017, you gerrymandered District 3 to make it less competitive. I hope this time around you will follow HB 21-1047 and do right by El Paso County and our communities. Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay, and can I get your name? Do you have her name? Did we get that? Okay. All right, now we'll read item C and continue on. Well, if you hold on, let's just have, come on down. Let's have her read item C as well. But I'll still let you come down.
Item number 5C, the Redistricting Commission will afford up to 3 minutes for non-El Paso County residents for comments related to redistricting.
And so this will continue on. Anyone now who wants to comment, go ahead for 3 minutes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. My name is Joe Mangles. My address is 1722 Auburn Drive in District 5 of the Springs. So I wanted to comment to just point out that all of the maps outside are inadequate. A and B do not adequately correct past gerrymandering. C, D, and E are actively going to make things worse by diluting the vote of many communities of color. In particular, I'd like to discuss the lack of adequate representation for Southeast Colorado Springs. So when I first moved here 3 years ago, I lived in the Southeast, and the community there welcomed me with open arms. I had never had a time in my life where I was so connected to my neighbors, the people that lived near me. So the people in the Southeast care very deeply for one another, and many in the area take action in the community to help each other out. So my question is, why then is the Southeast so consistently being disenfranchised? At the moment, the area is split between 3 districts. So the compassionate and close-knit community of the Southeast also happens to be predominantly people of color. Why are they not one of your communities of interest, whereas apparently, Whitefield and Monument are? Let's not mince words here. Regardless of intent, all current redistricting options are skewed toward the interest of local GOP, which I believe all of y'all are, and have the effect of silencing already disenfranchised communities of color. When we talk about systemic racism, the maps outside are a clear example of that. This is not good enough for the working people of El Paso County, so please do better. All right, thank you.
All right, come on up, sir. Yep.
Hello, my name is Tim Davis. I live at 221 East Washington Street, Colorado Springs. I and a lot of people I know have been working really hard getting people to vote. In voter registration, going door to door, promoting candidates. One of the most difficult things we encounter is a kind of apathy, but it's apathy based on experience of some kind. I feel like we need to restore faith in government, especially in this day and age. So when you give yourself the very, very important job of drawing maps that will provide all the things we want, and you've listed them out, competitiveness, fairness, all of those things that somehow result in your expectations rather than the public expectations. I want to be able to tell people that these maps were drawn by people like themselves, Democrats, unaffiliated, and Republicans working together to be a fair thing. I'm not accusing you of being unfair. It just has the appearance and seemingly the result of unfairness. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any additional comments? Anyone wishing to comment from the audience? Okay, I want to actually, if it's okay, just pull on a thread a little bit. The two people who came down from the southeast, or the old Colorado City one. If you were to draw a map, what do you want us to base it on? I live in Briargate. I will admit that, and I understand. I'm friends with Yolanda Avila, who represents that area down there on City Council. To just pull on a thread for a minute, what would you like to see in that district? And please come back up, the two I know who talk specifically about that. If you were to have a map that you were to draw.
Well, you can check out Katie Zukas' map. That's pretty close to what I like. Again, it's uniting, and this is, I care a lot about walkability, urbanism. When you think about downtown, when you think about Old North End, when you think about Manitou, when you think about Old Colorado City, there's a certain feel. And if you think about Patty Jewett, there's a certain feel. It doesn't make sense for it to be divided over there, of being able to walk. You have historic buildings. You've got places where you can get around. You can use the bus to get around. Like I'm talking about like the Zeb and going and being able to take the 3 to the incline to the 33. Like I can get to places there. I would also include the Broadmoor, which is historic as well. And that's kind of what I see as our community. And that's kind of like where I've spent, I guess, the majority, a large part of my life in terms of like places, where I went to school, where I went to high school, where I was born. Like,
yeah,
those are kind of like the areas that make up like my story in Colorado Springs. And I would say a lot of that's the walkability, the, just and the historicness of that area.
Okay. At the same time, would you add in, would you say security, Whitefield, Fort Carson, and Fountain are community of interest?
I would say Fort Carson, it would be unfair to put that in with us. I can see how you sometimes have to, but I do know that it is important for like security, Whitefield to be together, and I don't really see those as areas that are cohesive with District 3.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then the other lady.
Thank you for the invitation to expand on this, Commissioner Williams. I think what I would reiterate that I would like to see is, one, actually just acknowledging that Southeast is a community of interest, because as a member of the public, I saw none of that in the presentation tonight. None of that. So please don't erase us. That's one. Two, I think that, yes, Catherine Zuka's map, I haven't looked at it thoroughly, but I was pleased to see kind of what her boundaries were. And I would say that, I realize there are complex factors going into this, but I do think at the very least, the consideration of the fact that a community of interest is being divided in 3 different ways, can it be divided? Well, ideally, I think we should all be in one district, but even so, can we get it in 2 districts? I think factors like that are relevant to what we're expressing here. So I appreciate the opportunity to share that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions from commissioners? I just was curious since we had some specifics on that one. And Commissioner Gonzalez, if you have questions, you can chime in too.
I have comments, no questions.
Okay. Within the public, do we have anyone else who would like to make comments under 5A, B, or C? And I know that we had some people with questions. This would be an appropriate time to come down as we're in open meeting, and Clerk Schleicher can answer your questions. And I know we lost the gentleman who had a question. Come on back down. We'll just have the question, and then if Clerk Schleicher wants to answer it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was my dad. So he just passed it to me. He had to leave. Data check here regarding the voter totals cited in the slides reviewed during item 2. Just for clarification, were the Republican and Democrat numbers either the total votes cast, or are they actual numbers including like unaffiliated voters? And related, these numbers are important to reflect the quantity of unaffiliated voters. Including that data is going to be important in the interest of ensuring voter access. So bottom line, how do we reflect the unaffiliated voters?
Okay, thank you. And tell your dad thanks for submitting that.
So that's a good question. In fact, it's total votes cast.
Total votes cast, or is it total people in the census?
Well, so when we're sitting here taking a look, we're going off total population, but some of that data that you looked at when we were looking at competitiveness is total votes cast.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have anyone else with specific questions? Come on back up.
My name is Richard Ware. I would like to know the URL or something like it to reach the redistricting tool. Perhaps it could be up on the screen.
Well, I know our URL is www.elpasoco.com. And from there, you can go straight to the redistricting website. It's about the third or fourth bullet down. That's how I get to it. Ryan, did you want to answer that on the specific URL?
Commissioner, you are correct. If you go to the website, elpasoco.com, you can get it from there. And I think if you do /redistricting, that will get you there as well. Sorry. I'm sure. Thanks. Oh, I think somebody else is driving it for me. Do you want to just scroll down there? A little bit further up, or so yeah, if you click on this web page here, it takes you to our redistricting website, which is where you can submit comments, and then a little bit further down is where you access the Esri tool.
Okay, so that gets that question down. And also too, this evening's presentations will be posted on the redistricting website as well. And so if you need to go back in and watch the Esri presentation, I congratulate those who've chaired up here. In the past, it's a little bit of, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the meeting. There's a lot of stuff to do when you're trying to manage this when you're chairing the meeting. So if you all have a chance, you can go in there, view the presentations. They will be posted. Mr. Schleicher's will be posted in full so that you can go through the whole thing as well. Okay, any further questions before we move on to item number 6? Okay. So our item number 6 is the Redistricting Commission. Oh, I should let Bridget read it. Go ahead, I'll let you read it, sorry.
Item number 6, Redistricting Commission direction to staff.
Okay, commissioners, do we have any directions that we want to give?
Again, I have some comments and I can give some direction at the end of that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Wanted to highlight a few things. Just based on the public comment, I did want to highlight one gentleman said that us appointing ourselves was a violation of the state rule or the bill that passed. That was one of the options. So we were definitely in compliance with the state bill. I just want to clarify that. Only one person said that, but I just want to clarify it because that was stated. I did want to say also couple of people, I think two stated we're beholden potentially to donors, whatever happened. Again, I self-funded over 90% of my original race. So I am beholden to the people and the public of El Paso County. That's who I owe everything to. And that's how I'll make my fair and just decisions on any of these maps, because it's the right thing to do for the public. And people can trust that I do that. The other thing I did want to highlight some comments about, because a lot of the comments came out about Southeast Colorado Springs. And that somebody talked about, we didn't even, it didn't be brought up as a community of interest specifically, but I did want to highlight, I believe Mr. Mikos was there. He and I have chatted before we appointed ourselves, so no violation, about how I do consider a lot of Southeast Colorado Springs a community of interest. If you heard our last meeting, I specifically stated in the maps that I wanted to see for District 4 that my request included Fountain, Security Whitefield, and Hanover remain together. That means I am open to allowing the southeast part of the Springs. I have the northwest portion of Southeast Colorado Springs. Of my County 4 district, northwest corner is the southeastmost corner of Colorado Springs. So I've demonstrated an openness to that happening. If that is the smartest decision, that is still to be decided. But I've clearly stated my openness in that in my request that the other aspects. To Ms. Landgraf, former state representative, I appreciate the information on Fort Carson, and then also that I don't know if it was her or another person who highlighted that there is a community of interest with the school district. I was not fully aware of that. So in terms of guidance, because we're also asking for guidance here, I do think maybe perhaps Fort Carson, if that is the interest with Fort Carson and the school districts and with the fountain, perhaps we consider keeping Fort Carson in District 4. But I'm open to that based on the information. I'm not going to direct that. We still want to look at all options, but that's something I would be concerned about if we do lose Fort Carson, if it would break up Fountain and the school districts. And the last thing I'm going to highlight here is I will be very honest. I am absolutely the strongest advocate for the southeast of Colorado Springs. City and El Paso County, Lojinos Gonzalez has been an advocate for that area. I represent the southeast of Colorado Springs that was highlighted several times. I live in the southeast. I taught in the southeast, and I live in the southeast, and I have always been, I'm a Hispanic, and somebody said Hispanics can't get elected, we're disenfranchised. I am a Hispanic, the first one elected. We can do it, okay? So yes, maybe that community needs to come together as a community of interest for this. Again, that's still to be determined, but Lojinos Gonzalez has been the best representative and a loud advocate for our community, and I'm very proud of my work. And I'm going to continue that through the end of my term. So when people say we're disenfranchised, you have a Hispanic leader that everybody knows is a leader for that community and our entire city and our entire county. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. Do we want a sixth alternative map? Or do we want to wait for the public to submit an alternative map? Go ahead, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. So I'll say that I am looking forward to the citizen input, and I'm glad we have this ESRI tool because several citizens have made particular types of recommendations, and you know how this is. I mean, it's nice to hear what they are, but always trying to get it down onto a map to actually show what it means, that's a lot harder, but this is, I think the ESRI tool is an opportunity for the citizens to offer those kinds of ideas on the map, because there is an enormous number of communities of interest, and it's clear from the testimony today certain types of communities of interest mean more to some people, and other types of communities of interest mean more to other people. But I think we all have to recognize as a community, as citizens, as friends, and we live together, it's impossible to fully meet keeping every community of interest together. I mean, you can just imagine, right, the problematic nature of that. So using just one kind of obvious example, school districts. You could call school districts a community of interest, except that there's 17 of them in El Paso County, and there's 5 commissioners. So there is just no way to make that even remotely perfectly compatible. So I just ask everybody's patience and understanding, because we're going to do the best we can, but it is hard to get all of this to work together. And somebody somewhere, a group of people, some people, whatever, they're not going to be happy. They will think their community of interest is more important than somebody else's community of interest, and we're gonna see that. Now, with regard to specific direction, there was a comment from one of the citizens about, I'd like to maybe see if Ryan could maybe respond to this, about maybe adding another local race to try to do that comparison. And that sounded like pretty reasonable. I think you had some research, or there's research that's been done, and those national races, I think, are pretty strong indicators of certain types of sentiments of, is it too much trouble to maybe add another local race? And I think I heard the comment was clerk and recorder. But I want to give you an opportunity to either think about it or maybe respond to it, because maybe that is a good idea, maybe it's a bad idea, but I just want to kind of have a follow-up on that concept. So maybe we could add that. And then, I'm sorry.
So, Commissioner, I was actually looking at that. I took myself out of that race because of the optics. So, you know, one of the things is, as we look at the county sheriff, I'd be more than happy to include another county-wide seat, you know, into that. If we're sitting here looking at the county coroner, county assessor, but as far as myself, I was going to put myself in there, but I felt that the optics did not look good, so I kept my race out and put Sheriff Joe Roybal in there. But I'd be more than happy to throw another county-wide seat in there.
Well, I'm glad that you added the sheriff's office. That's certainly one of the most prominent. And maybe we could have a deliberation over maybe adding a second one, and then it ends up playing down to assessor, coroner, treasurer, something like that.
I think up until a few weeks ago, assessor was a pretty boring office. So.
Commissioner, if I could address some of that as well. The races that we picked for the analysis were done strategically. There was a comment earlier that was talking about the gubernatorial race and proffered the idea that the candidate on one side may have been weak. I would tend to agree with that assessment. That represents one end of the spectrum. A race like the sheriff's office represents the other end of the spectrum, where you had a really strong candidate on the other side who got 60% of the vote. Looking at the U.S. Senate and Secretary of State, if you were to average the Republican and Democratic performance in all the major countywide races, the two that come out closest for both Republicans and Democrats across that are the U.S. Senate and the Secretary of State race, which is why those races were selected. If you went to a treasurer's race, then the Republican in that race performed better compared to other Republicans in El Paso County. And so we picked things that kind of represented the edge of the spectrum. So we certainly could add another race. It wouldn't be difficult work to do that. Just may not yield an additional data point that gives you anything new information-wise that hasn't already been communicated.
Thank you. I think if I understand correctly, first of all, I appreciate the point made about not including clerk and recorder. that sounds reasonable. And I also appreciate the point that maybe adding another local race might not show any more data than the races that you chose have already shown. I'm interested in my colleagues' perspective. I'd still like to maybe recommend we add one more local race. It just seems reasonable to me. And if there is no additional insight from it, then so be it. Then maybe if there's no additional insight, then maybe we don't carry it through, future meetings. So just that perspective, I just make that recommendation. And then on the maps themselves, a couple of recommendations. So, we had some specific direction we gave at the last meeting, and I may have missed it, but I'm not recalling any recommendations at that time about moving Carson from 4 to 3, which a couple of them recommend. I think A and B recommend that. And I do believe an enormous number of the people from Fort Carson that just decide to stay in our community and retire, they retire in the security Widefield Fountain area. That's where many of them go. So I think there's a legitimate comment about a connection between Carson and those communities. So I don't know if this is even achievable, but I think it was A and B that actually moved Carson to 3. And I'm wondering if there's a way to rework A and B, but not move Carson, and see if there's something that can be generated as a result of that. I appreciate the comments from some of the citizens about precincts and so forth, but there is some logic in those precincts, and maybe the logic is even more in the bundling of a subset of precincts, right? But I think it's important to pay some attention, at least pay some attention to the super voter and the starred voter numbers, and we certainly have a couple here that are pretty big. I don't know if there's a way to rework those that still achieves what was originally asked and reduces the number of super voters and starred voters, but it's at least, a question. But anyway, I just, on A and B, it just seems to me this question about how can they be worked but not moving Carson. I just think that sounds reasonable. So consider adding another race, the A and B comments, knowing that we're just not going to get every community of interest fully addressed. There's just too many to choose from, and it's really hard to do. And maybe the last one, and I think frankly it's the most important of these, I am really looking forward to the citizen input. I want to see, so because people made comments suggesting, X, Y, or Z and so forth, I'd like to see what they would propose that would look like, and let's see what that might generate.
So Commissioner, looking at that is, I would propose doing 2 more races, doing the congressional and doing another countywide. So, as far as getting your perspective, so I'd be more than happy to do 2 more races where we do the congressional. We already got U.S. Senate, so we'll throw the U.S. congressional in, and we'll also throw in another countywide. You're absolutely right in your comments, and so are many citizens that are here this evening in regards to the definition of communities of interest. Everybody has their own definition of that. And historically here in El Paso County, we looked at the wildland urban interface. That is a community of interest. Our military bases, especially when we've seen the natural disasters we have seen, it plays no politics. When we saw the floods in 2015 in Manitou, the fires in Waldo Canyon in 2012, Black Forest, but what was important there, the community of interest of everybody west of I-25 shares the same concern of the wildland urban interface. So those are things also when we sit there and talk about everybody's got different definitions of community of interest. What makes us very unique, as you mentioned, is we got 17 different school districts and a number of different municipalities. There is not another county in the state of Colorado that has 17 school districts. We're it. So trying to keep that together is extremely difficult. Another thing that makes us unique, our military bases. That is a community of interest. And when you sit there and you talk to the members, as you mentioned, folks that work on Fort Carson, they serve on Fort Carson, they're living in Security, Widefield, Fountain. I grew up down there. I grew up down in the Southeast, graduated down there. So I completely understand some of the comments. But your military bases together is a community of interest.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And maybe just a quick follow-up to that, and then I'm certainly interested in my fellow redistricting colleagues, some of their perspectives. But to that wildland-urban interface, so one of the things that we've been able to achieve, and it was something I personally worked on, was getting $18 million for the Forest Service to do mechanical mitigation in National Forest Service land. And that work is taking place now. It's a 5-year program, and they're in the first year. And they're doing mechanical mitigation now just north of Highway 24 on the west side of El Paso County. And that will go all the way up to the Douglas County line and actually move a little bit beyond that too. So that is something that some people may not necessarily see it in a specific way that way, but others do see how important it is, the high risk that the communities of Palmer Lake and Western Monument and Manitou Springs and the Broadmoor area all share in that particular. But that's, I think, just reflective of the point I had made earlier. There's a lot of different ways to define communities of interest, and it'll be impossible to fully address all of them. So thank you.
Commissioner Bremer, did you have some comments?
I do. So in going back to your original presentation, while I agree in concept, and again, this is just a starting point for direction, while I believe in concept that both options D and E with the goals of keeping Monument and Black Forest together, and then I think E was adjusting for growth. I think based on your summary of those not achieving competitiveness, I would rather, I think we have a lot of other good ideas, good input, and a lot of other directions to go. I, for one, would like to see us be efficient with just cutting those two options out and see where we go from there.
I would agree with that.
I am fine with that. Do we want to do that as a formal motion, or do we want to focus in on how we would like another map drawn? Go ahead, Commissioner Geithner.
I would just say, while I appreciate the concerns on those, we're still really at the beginning of this, and it's hard for me, we may not be able to find another map where, Monument and Black Forest are together, which is something that I care about. And so while I would agree that at this point, it doesn't seem like those are, maybe one of my top, I don't see any real reason to eliminate those today. I don't think that we have to discuss them at length. I think we can wait and see what comes in. But I'm kind of more of the mindset is let's get all the information on the table and give ourselves a little bit more time before we just start, from today eliminating. I just don't see a whole lot of value in time in doing that. I will say I am interested in kind of seeing if there is another way, not necessarily to keep Monument and Black Forest together, though I think that is, I think there's value there, but at least keeping Monument together and Black Forest together. I don't know how many other combinations, and I look forward to using the Esri tool as well to try and get a sense of what is possible to meet all that criteria. But, to the points that have been made, I mean, absolutely, there's no way to keep every community of interest together. Everyone's going to have different priorities. I'm also going to say, I was really trying not to do too much commentary here, but someone said to me not too long ago that it is healthy to have cynicism, or excuse me, it is healthy to have skepticism, but we have to be careful when we cross over to cynicism. And I think that was really valuable advice. So I'm going to say, you know, there's been a lot of conversation here. It is clear there are political lines, there are all kinds of things. I get it. We all experience that every day. But these are very difficult. These are just a lot of different, we will not be able to make every community of interest. It's just not possible mathematically. So if we cross over to, you know, the world of cynicism where we just see that everything is terrible or someone is being targeted, it's not super valuable. And so I would just ask you to encourage us all to think about that when we are talking about our comments. Skepticism, absolutely, but help us come up with the best ways of what we can do, because it is a very, very difficult process. I'm going to point out, as we were talking about military installations, you know, Schriever Air Force Base there's a whole lot of Falcon community who works at Schriever. Actually, Peterson too. So those are, you know, those are districts that, again, those are going to be very difficult. And yet there are a lot of people who feel like we need to be completely in with rural. So there's a lot of different identities that, even of the people who live in Falcon, they don't all value the same thing. I would still like to see, if possible, knowing that I-25 does split Monument. And I'm going to make, again, I think I said this in the past meeting, but Monument itself is split by I-25 in their most recent home rule charter. So that is a logical boundary that the folks of Monument did come up with. So if we are going to have those divisions, I still think that is a logical boundary. But I wonder if there is a way to keep, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit before, and again, I don't know what this is going to do to those voters in terms of those who are going to be super voters or star voters. I know that is something, because I have personally heard from folks who didn't get to vote and they are not happy. So when we start to get to, you know, to large numbers of those are potential for people to be concerned or feel disenfranchised as well, especially if they feel like they are a member of a specific community in and of themselves. So those are important things. But I would love to see some amount of attempt to keep some more of those Eastern Plains, again, just as a concept, to see a little more of the Eastern Plains. I don't know if that will be shifting, but a little more of the Eastern Plains together. I know the population is not great there, so that probably won't shift a whole lot. I don't know exactly where, I know roughly where the boundary is between D49 and D11. I know, you know, obviously you've kind of got a little bit of both in there. I don't know if we can do something around those boundaries to try and get some more of that Eastern Plains. Again, I know the population is not, but I would like to see a map where we're trying to do a little more of that, if that's possible.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Andy, did you get that? Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Bremer.
Just real quick, I perhaps was not as clear in my attempts to be very concise and quick. I think, you know, Commissioner Geithner, your points are well taken. And one of my reasons of a few, in addition to what I see as a binary lack of political competitiveness, but also a major reason for my proposing to eliminate D and E, and still trying to keep up with those concepts, is actually the exceptionally large number of disenfranchised voters with both of those options as they're drawn right now. So, I mean, I don't know if there's another way to keep up with that concept and know that this one, to me, neither D nor E as they are right now with that number of disenfranchised voters, I don't think that's a great option for El Paso County as a whole.
The trick, Commissioner, is when we're sitting here looking at Commissioner District 1 and District 5 on the same election calendar with 2, 3, and 4 on another one where they're on the presidential ticket. So there's going to be some disenfranchised voters, but trying to limit that, I completely understand, and that's why I put the data up there.
Okay, so sir, we have closed public comment, but if you want to come down real fast, because if you speak out there, you can't hear on the tape.
Yeah, sorry. I just have to comment based on I'm sorry, my name's John Christiansen. I'm at 329 West Monument. I'm in District 3. I just wanted to comment. So you opened up public comment tonight, and you heard from so many people who described communities of interest themselves. And then what I heard, even from our own county clerk and commissioner, and from our commissioners, you asked us not to be cynical. How can we not be cynical? We all described communities of interest, and then you guys all got up there and hypothetically thought about all these potential communities of interest, completely dismissing everybody here that talked about the real existing communities of interest.
Okay.
Yeah, military bases might be.
Sir?
They might be a community of interest. Bald white men might be a community of interest too, right?
Sir, you're out of order now. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I have not yet stated my comments, and I haven't been dismissive either. It sounds
And yes, you're right. You're
it
correct, and
sounds
I
to me we
appreciate
do
that.
have two recommended maps.
I actually sincerely appreciate that you have not, but every single other person up here has been, including the person who told us not to be cynical when it's so obvious that she is coming up with some sort
Okay,
of
sir.
mental
Now
gymnastics
you're
in
out of
order
order.
to dismiss people. All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
Okay. Okay, so I am told by the county attorney that we don't actually need to give direction, but what have you heard? And if you need to rely on Angie as far as two different alternatives here.
Hello. Okay. So it sounds like we're going to be looking at map A and B again and reworking it without moving Fort Carson. So that would be our first one that we're doing. The second one would be a new map to keep more of the Eastern Plains together, looking at the D49 and D11 school districts.
Okay, Commissioner Bremer.
And to reiterate Commissioner Gonzalez's comments, he can speak for himself, but I would also deduct from that keeping the southeast Colorado Springs area together is fairly important to him. Is he still online?
Yes, I would agree. Thanks.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind another map that pulls a little more on the comments we've had here tonight about the southeast. If we could do that, it's not an area where I live. So, but I heard what they were saying about the southeast and security wide field and something down there that pulls upon their comments that they made. Or actually, I enjoy seeing people submit maps. They're very interesting to me. So, we appreciate you also taking the time to submit your own map.
And I was going to say, I think we do have a starting point for that one that was the one submitted, correct?
So
Please,
the terms that
yes, speak in the microphone, ma'am.
So my question, I guess, I think that's what Amy was speaking to, was the definition of southeast. So is that going to be just Fountain, Security, Whitefield, Fort Carson, or are we also looking at the southeast portion of Colorado Springs as well?
As a commissioner in that district, I think you're looking at that southernmost part of my district is considered southeast Colorado Springs. And I think in the very first meeting, we even talked about like the Mitchell High School area down is kind of what that, I think, I think that's a good definitive boundary of it.
So, Commissioner, what we're looking at is Security, Whitefield, Fountain, in my definition, is not southeast.
Correct. Mine either.
Southeast to me is Southborough, Eastborough, and so we're looking at there in Harrison School District 2. Growing up down there, that's what the southeast is. Is there any more comments?
Well, we're going to put Mr. Sliker in charge of drawing that map.
Okay.
One thing I would like to ask just for this map here, we'll look at the southeast, Mitchell High School, Southborough, Eastborough. Are there any particular precinct you want us to look at?
I need to look closer.
Okay.
at
If,
that map.
if I might comment to that.
Yes. Please, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
I think that's a reasonable thing to do, but that really requires some sitting down and analyzing it.
Yep.
For a while. And I think I know what some of the citizens were asking for with regard to Southeast, but I'll just tell you that I have had other people include non-Colorado Springs areas as defining that as part of the Southeast. So there are different people that have different definitions of what that means.
Yep.
And then I did also ask about, and I think this maybe could be some of the additional recommendations, was to, I was suggesting adding another local race, but Steve, I thought you suggested maybe adding 2 more for the evaluation and see if it means anything. Might not mean anything, but there were the 2 races, because there was a comment about, trying to add some more local races in there. So what were the 2 you recommended? I mean,
So my recommendation is put another countywide race. I have no problem putting my race in there, have no problem with the county treasurer. I think, as Ryan Parcell alluded to, is our county treasurer received the most votes, of any Republican candidate on the countywide ticket. So I don't think that would be a good race to look at. We could look at county assessor. I have no problem, but for our first meeting, I didn't want to throw my race in there because of optics, but I'll put myself in there. The other one was U.S. Congress. So to match right up with U.S. Senate.
And you do get most of the county now with U.S. Congress, but not the eastern side.
Yeah.
And I do like assessor, despite all the attention we're getting right now around assessments. Most people didn't know until a few weeks ago who their assessor was. And so I do like assessor. It's a little more of a boring race. So.
And I'll accept the recommendation from the clerk and recorder as well for those 2.
And Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. I could be completely wrong. I don't have any opposition to adding any of those races. And my recollection is that those countywide races were all very close in nature, so I don't know how much real difference that we're going to get from those, but certainly, I'm not opposed to adding them in. I am, however, going to make a statement. I understand that people care deeply about their communities, but a statement that was made about mental gymnastics is offensive to our military families. I want you to please remember that our military families are communities of interest as well, and you can be upset about that, but the reality is that those families often rely on each other very heavily in very difficult times as well. And so while I absolutely am happy to hear that we're going to take a look, I think actually Commissioner Gonzalez mentioned that he too thought that should be looked at, so I don't think that was omitted in any way. But we need to be respectful of all of our communities, not just our own individually, and understand that there are all kinds of different things that tie people together, whether it is location, demographics. There are all kinds of different things that tie people together, and I would request that we speak respectfully and not minimize the other types of communities of interest that there are.
All right, now, do we have any further guidance for staff? Go ahead, Mr. Parcell.
May I,
We need order. We need order. No comments from the audience, or we will recess and have people removed. Thank you.
To the extent that there's been discussion about how to define the Southeast, I would just say that through the website portal, if people wanted to examine the maps that the clerk and recorder's office has made available, they can submit comments and say, I think the southeast of Colorado Springs or southeast of the county should be kept together, specifically these precincts, because the precinct numbers are available on the Esri tool and some of the other maps. So that may help the commission and staff, and you give direction to the staff to work in specific precinct numbers. So just anyone that has felt strongly about that, I would just invite them to maybe do a little bit of looking as to see what they consider to be the Southeast Colorado Springs, what precinct numbers more or less coincide with that, and communicate that through the public forum.
Thank you very much. I believe we may have concluded our business for the evening. Am I correct? Does any commissioner have any further business? Okay, item number 7 is we are adjourned. Thank you for coming.